2021 together, please. We'll start with a prayer by Commissioner Val and the pledge by Commissioner Meade.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heavenly Father, once again, we come to you giving you honor and praise tonight for all the blessings you give us each and every day. Most of all, Father, for salvation, Lord, the greatest of them all. Please forgive us when we fail you, Lord, when we sin. Strengthen us, Lord, not to sin, to keep our eyes on you. Father, as we discuss the business for our people tonight, we pray that you would be with each heart, each mind, Father, as we discern the business of your people. All this we ask in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Either look at the flag that I have or the one on your screen and salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The approval of agenda.
I'd like to make a couple of modifications to this and actually additions also. Charles Turner is going to give us a COVID update at 6:30, so I'd like to add him to the agenda. At 6:30, it's hard to say where we're going to be, so we'll just let him speak when it's time. So I'll put him in number 6 for now, but we'll let him talk when it's time.
Okay.
Also, I'd like to add a resolution supporting the city of Oak Ridge in opposition to moving the HEU conversion and purification to Irwin, Tennessee. And we'll just do that at number 11 after Ben's Mobile Home Park.
Okay.
Do you have
Commissioner Meade,
else?
I second his motion with those modifications.
Is that all you needed? All right, those are my moves.
Any other comments, suggestions? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Wandale? He's not on there. Commissioner Meredith?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Commissioner McCamey? Commissioner Yeager?
Aye.
Commissioner Meade?
Aye.
Commissioner Scott?
Here.
Chairman Isbell?
Aye. We have members present for a quorum. There's 2 absent as of right now.
Anna, did you get mine? Yes.
No, I did not. I got it now.
Okay.
Please. Yes. Go ahead.
The only one we have absent now is Commissioner Wandale. I expect he'll probably be in at some time. Next, we have the appearance of citizens. Is anyone here in the virtual world, or I see no one in the room? And Commissioner Wandale is present. Seeing none, we'll move on to opioid litigation requested by the law director.
Thank you, Chairman Isbell. This came to us by General Clark, both the retainer agreement and the resolution supporting the opioid lawsuit. The mayor may have more information on it, judging from the email I received. But Mayor, do you have any comments on this issue?
No, sir. I think it speaks for itself. And we also went over it in purchasing agenda. And essentially, when the general came at the outset and commission discussed in concept, proceeding with this or expressing support, this is the same legislation that went up the ladder to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court noted that there wasn't, I guess, official authorization on behalf of district attorney generals across the state. And so the DAs in the various judicial districts are going back to their commissions. This is under the Drug Dealer Liability Act and not the other lawsuits that deal with deceptive marketing and those practices and all of that. So that's all I have, Jay.
That's all I have too, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution in support of the Drug Dealer Liability Act lawsuit.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Yeager, seconded by Commissioner Scott. Discussion. Commissioner Meade? Commissioner Meade, did you want to speak? I can't see you.
No, I was just thinking we were going to a vote.
Okay. All right. Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Wandale,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner McCamey,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager,
Aye.
Commissioner Meade,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
and Chairman Isbell.
Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Next is the retainer agreement.
Move that we, I can't get my pad to work, that we approve the retainer agreement for this case.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Meade?
Any discussion? Commissioner Scott?
No, I had seconded the motion.
Okay.
This was also discussed in purchasing today.
That's correct. Call the roll, please.
Wandale,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner McCamey,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager, Commissioner Meade,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
Chairman Isbell.
Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Commissioner Meade and Commissioner Wandale, I can't see your mic. Just in case if you want to speak, just go online and hold your hand up, please. Because I wouldn't want to bypass you in any way. Next is the mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item on the mayor's report is requesting a motion to approve resolution number 2103865. This is updating Anderson County's occupational safety and health plan. We are required to update this every 7 years or when there are changes. During their last review, they noted that we needed to update our census and then also the locations of the various employees in those departments. That Kim in HR has taken care of all that, updating those forms. The only other changes in this particular plan from what you approved prior is that we did have to meet certain requirements and update according to reporting times for certain injuries such as amputation. And those are the only changes that have been made.
Motion to approve resolution 2103865.
Have a motion by Commissioner Yeager, followed by a second by Commissioner Wandale.
Yes. Thank you.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Wandale,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner McCamey,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager, Commissioner Meade,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
Chairman Isbell.
Aye. Mayor, before you go on next, I seen Charles Turner on there just a second ago. Are you still on there, Mr. Turner? He dropped back off, so he'll be back at 6:30. Go ahead, Mayor. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. The next is I'm requesting a motion to authorize the county mayor to formally request the Tennessee Department of Transportation to include lighting in the State Route 170 widening project. So this issue has come up in front of commission before in a request to light the intersection at Claxton Elementary there in Claxton. TDOT is in final stages of planning and engineering for that State Route 170 or Edgemore Road as we know it. In lieu of the request for the intersection, I did ask TDOT officials and engineers on a call if we could incorporate lighting into their plan. This would enable us to save some engineering costs. They did say that we could do that, and they recommended that we get together and determine if this is something we want to request. We would need to do it in the form of an official letter. I asked if a template letter existed. They said it did not. It would just need to be a letter directly to the head of TDOT. And then they recommended that we determine what areas we would like lit. As greenway extension and bike trails have been added into this plan, and then also some areas include sidewalk, it's a good opportunity to ask for that to be incorporated. They noted that how it would work if we did do this, they would do the engineering, they would include it in the plans, but it would be a local cost to do the installation, and then of course the long-term maintenance. In regard to the contracting, it would be let with their contract once they go to bid on the larger Edgemore Road project, but then they would set aside a separate contract for us for the lighting. So this would be the first phase. First, find out if they would be willing to do it, and then second, what we would identify as a recommendation for lighting. I put in my particular request, if you did authorize this, and we do get a positive response from TDOT, that you would allow the commissioners from that district to work with me. And then I might even suggest tourism and the Chamber of Commerce perhaps be involved as well. And the city officials, if we would like, as far as the connectivity to the Oak Ridge Milton Hill Greenway. But that is the motion, and I'm happy to answer any questions at all on that particular topic.
Commissioner Yeager.
Commissioner Meade, move to approve.
There we go. I'll second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Meade, a second by Commissioner Yeager. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Wandale,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner McNamee,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager, Commissioner Meade,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
Chairman Isbell.
Aye. Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you, commissioners, and I think this will be a great advancement for the connectivity between the city and the county, but then also a great advancement for the Claxton community. So I look forward to working on that. The next item is last month at both Budget Committee and Operations Committee, I mentioned the authorizing governance document for the sales tax split. This is the rural local option sales tax that is split in the county. And at that particular time, the law director had done an initial look and could not locate anything, but he was going to do a deep dive into the files. He did look through all 9 of his folders on this particular issue. He did locate resolutions and notes and information when we did increase the local option sales tax, but nothing on the authorizing resolution for the actual split. And then Leanne and I did look through the minutes, and then I also went through some of the older files before Annette's time when Mary was the commission secretary and I could not locate anything. And so what I had mentioned to this group and also to operations, and this group actually passed a motion asking me to return with information. I included in your packet as an example of how Roane County handles it. They do most of their appropriation resolution is about 15 pages. And what they do is they put a lot of authorizing resolutions inside the appropriation resolution. But you can also handle it individually with its own standalone resolution. But what I had recommended is the way it is now, and we have no document that's backing it up, is the schools by law get a portion. The remaining rural portion that is, for the county has been split 50-50 between general fund and the highway department. And what I suggested last month was because we have a longstanding issue of not funding capital outlay. So we know many years ago we put in place just a portion of a penny to fund that. That perhaps we don't take money from highway, but perhaps we cap it as it's grown over time. And I think last year it was set at 500,000. Perhaps you cap that and then split the remaining portion between capital outlay and the general fund. And that way you continue to build more, because as you know, as commissioners, as we've tried to put money in capital outlay, and when you're faced with raising taxes or funding existing operations, it's very difficult to come up with the extra funds to go ahead and start funding that. But that's important to not only getting out of debt, but also, you as commission many times have requests that come to you, and really and truly the only way for you to fund them is wait for a windfall in terms, such as a grant, or take it from the general fund. This is a way to put some funds aside, and then you still, obviously, so for instance, if you did it in capital outlay, you could still give extra to highway department if you wanted, or not. But it gives you control over some of those project requests that might come to you, and it gives you a potential funding source, if that makes sense. But that was just a suggestion. But I am reporting back that no authorizing resolution located.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McCamey, go ahead.
I feel like that we need an authorizing resolution. And with that being said, I'm going to make a motion to request the law director draft a resolution to present at the commission meeting that would authorize the split of the rural local option sales tax. The rural portion shall accrue at 100% into the highway fund, not to exceed 500,000. And that's what we put in the budget last year. Once that amount is received, all available rural local option sales tax would accrue at a rate of 50% into the general fund, 50% into the capital outlay fund. And I so move.
Commissioner Meade, I second the motion. I think it's a really good idea to finally actually have a steady stream of funds from taxation going into our capital outlays instead of just hoping for something to come along.
Hey, we have a motion and second, and we have the road superintendent, Gary Long, here, and he'd like to speak. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Thank you. And I'm more than glad to speak about it. Highway Department gets a very little of the local option sales tax. If you're going to cap everybody's, not a problem with it. But I don't know why you would pick on me, Anderson County Highway Department, just because I get very little of it, and it's all up right now. We know that. But you also, and you probably don't care, but anyway, my gasoline fuel sales tax is down. It was down last year, $10 million throughout the state. It's going to be down again this year. However, I appreciate the concern of the mayor as far as trying to get us out of debt. Must be going to borrow our way out of debt. Don't think that'll work. But what little I get on local option sales tax is a percentage. And when they first set that up, when Gail Cook was our finance director, if you all will remember, I took a hit on that on the front end because the state had overpaid the county more than they should have, and therefore we didn't get what we were supposed to get to start with. And it's all on a percentage. We all know the sales tax, according to this internet sales, is up, and this epidemic has stopped a lot of people from buying gas and fuel. And your capital outlay projects is very important. Maybe it should be a budgetary item in each department. It has been for years with us up to lately. I don't know if people don't remember when the ambulance department and the sheriff's department got their own vehicles out of their capital outlay, out of their own money. As far as the resolution to take my money, I'd appreciate if somebody would call and tell me or ask me when it concerns the highway department. That would be common courtesy. And I understand rumors and street talk, and that's how come me to hear some of this. There's nobody ever officially called me and said, oh, this is a great idea, Gary. We're going to cut your money. No, we're going to cap your money. And as far as the commissioners, if you think I'm not taking advantage of the money I get, come up there and show me. I'll match my books against any department as far as availability of funds and what we've done with the funding we've got. And Anderson County receives very little at the highway department from the taxpayers. Most of ours is gas and fuel tax, which has been down the last 2 years and will probably be down next year. I know it's going to be down this fiscal year. If you got any questions, I'll be glad to answer, including you, Miss Mayor.
How does that tax work that you get there? Is that based, is it distributed from all over the state, or it's like the people in Anderson County when you buy?
No, it's collected on the state, and first level it's on the federal. They get their portion, states get their portion, then each county gets their portion, depending on the population and the area of square miles. It's all on the formula. It goes to the state, and then they send it back to us.
So in other words,
It's all countywide, statewide.
okay, so it don't matter where Anderson
No.
County residents buy their fuel,
No.
we're still going to get.
As long as it's in the state of Tennessee.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Some people think you got to buy it at home for us to get the benefit, but that's incorrect. They collect it statewide, and we get a portion of it.
Okay.
Any other question?
We got any questions of Mr. Long? Commissioner Meade?
Commissioner Meade here. I am personally open to more negotiations on where that cap is, where that transition happens. If there's good reason to support that, and there probably is, moving that around a little bit, I'd be willing to. I think we should make that part of the discussion before commission.
I appreciate it, but there was no support when the collections was down and we didn't receive the portion that we're supposed to get. We didn't get no bonus at the end of the year. So I don't know why we want to penalize us now, because the Amazon and eBay and all that stuff, sales is up, and everybody knows that's what it is. This epidemic is going through and everybody's getting it delivered to the mailbox. And that, due to the new law they've got on the books, we're receiving more sales tax than ever. And everybody talks about being up 100% or 200%, but when you wasn't getting nothing 2 years ago, it's pretty easy to double it.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Scott?
Thank you. Gary, do you get any money from the state through the clerk's side with DMV tags?
Not to my knowledge. I do not. We get a
Okay,
little
thank
money.
you.
We get some money. We used to get coal severance tax, which used to be a big budget item, but they've not minded Anderson County in a number of years. And that's the same deal in that we had a few years ago. They had mined in Campbell County and turned it in Anderson, which has nothing to do with this sales tax, but it's just an oversight. And the mayor will remember it that Campbell County wanted their money, and the state had overpaid Anderson County, Campbell County's money. We wasn't generating enough to pay them back, but I had it in my fund balance to send them a check after the state acknowledged they would acknowledge me paying them back instead of the state correcting the overpayment. And that's what they had planned to do, but we didn't generate any money. Mining is dead and mineral severance off a rock. If construction slows down, it'll be down. But most of ours come from fuel and diesel tax.
Yeah, one of my concerns is, I think it's 2035 is when there has to be a high percentage of vehicles being produced has to be electric. One of the things that we had discussed at one time with the state was, where's the money going to come from to keep up our highways if people aren't needing to buy gas? So that's why I was asking if you were getting any funding through, the driver's license end of it.
At this time, I don't think there's a tax on electric vehicles, or is, I'm not aware of it.
No, there's not a tax on electric vehicles, but there's going to be more electric vehicles out there, meaning that there's going to be less fuel purchased as a result of people charging their vehicles as opposed to putting gas in them.
Yes, you're exactly correct. General Motors was on the news about 2 weeks ago projecting that most of their vehicles would be electric by the year 2035 or 2040 or something like that. But yes, that's exactly what they're all going to.
Yeah, the federal government's making them change over. So with General Motors, it's nothing more than an advertising ploy because they're all starting to go that direction. But all right, thank you.
Commissioner Amy?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, maybe Gary can help me out here or the mayor. The highway department is under the same as the school on the maintenance of effort, which means we basically cannot cut their budget. Is that true?
You're asking me? Yes, we have a 5-year maintenance of effort, or as local money is in order to keep us in line with the state funding, correct?
And the funding that you budgeted for this year for sales tax was $500,000. Is that not right?
That's probably a fair statement.
Okay, and we've already collected over 600 and some thousand, maybe 700,000.
Okay. And
So we're not really cutting your budget, but if we allow that money to continue to go into the highway department, then it's going to raise our maintenance of effort. And if we have to come back and make that up, if sales tax does go down, we're going to have to take it out of county general fund. And of course, that's going to require a property tax increase or deplete our fund balance. So this is not cutting your budget. It's guaranteeing you up to $500,000 that you had in the budget this year. And then anything over that would be split. And we can use the capital outlay money for highway.
Yeah.
We got $500,000 this past year for dump trucks that came out of the county general fund. And, so we can do that if it becomes necessary. But my concern is the internet sales tax did cause us to have a big bump this year. But what happens next year when things go sour? We can't cut what we are putting in your budget under the maintenance of effort. So that's the reason I decided on the cap for the 500,000, and then anything over that go to the county general fund and the capital outlay fund, because we have $0.50, I think, going into the capital outlay fund, which is less than 100,000. So this allows us then to come back and buy more dump trucks if we need them or whatever. We can still do that. We can use it for highway, but it's a discretionary fund that the county commission decide where they need it the worst. And like I said, I don't want to get that maintenance of effort up there to where that we have to have a property tax increase to meet your budget.
Is that not the same deal with the school department as far as the county funding going to them? You're not capping their money or cutting their funding, are you?
They get a percentage of it. That's by state law. We can't do anything about that. The state says that's what we do there. So, basically we cannot do anything about that. The state has already passed a law, so this is what you do. They get a percentage of it.
And actually, as far as your mention of the dump trucks the last year, it was $500,000, but that's the first time the general fund has given the highway department any capital money. We put new roofs on our buildings, bought all of our equipment, and taking care of all our, up to this year, past year, and it was a year and a half getting the equipment ordered. And you've made it a habit for budget capital outlay to be for all the equipment and all the other departments and the structures and improvements and roofs and heating and air. It's a capital outlay. Up till this past year, when the other director was here, it was considered within our own budget. But if everybody else is going to get it, that's when I approached them about being considered for part of it. Now, if the county thinks that I can wait 20 more years to get $500,000, I don't believe so. Our equipment's down. We have a lot older equipment now, and you've got other departments says they can't run them over 200,000 miles. Got duct tape on the dash. Now, I've got news for you. You can come up there and check ours and look at it, and you know what we're running. And my men do a great job. My staff does a great job, and I think it's ridiculous that you think you could penalize the highway department. It's a penalty. I don't say it any way you want to, but it's going to be $600,000. It's going to be $100,000 cut. It's simple math in case you can't keep up with it. But now that's just the way that, you know, and I think it's ridiculous that you'd even mention it and not even mention it to the department head and or your road superintendent prior to this. You'd want to have a workshop on it and discuss it. That's great. I'll be glad to meet you. Got 9 votes. I guess you can do it anyway, but we'll see.
Well, it's my understanding this resolution can be changed at any time. It gives us something to talk about between now and next year, and we can do this on a 2-year, 1 year, or a 5-year, or make it permanent. But we, you know,
Talk about it before we do it.
I'm just concerned about the maintenance of effort because if we, you know, if we have to come up with the same amount next year, then and we don't receive the amount of sales tax that we received this year because we gave it to you, then we're in trouble. We've got to go back to the county general fund, and that gets into the property tax because that's about the only money we have that we can use is property tax money.
Well, I'd venture to say that $150,000 overpayment in my department would be minor to what you'll have if sales tax goes down. You've heard everybody else talk about sales tax and property tax, how they're coming in and projected all these projects. They've not poured the concrete on a lot of them yet. They're working on it, but you guys know as well as I do, there's no money, revenue, nothing generated. You'll get the concrete poured and somebody turn the light switch on. We've been living on that promise for 2 years, correct? Hello?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, when I mentioned about the capital outlay, I voted for it and supported it, and I know it was needed. And I'm not griping about that, and I didn't mean for it to come across like I was throwing that up there. What I'm saying is that we can still use capital outlay money for the county highway department should the need arise. And if you have needs, you come to us and say, we need this, and we've got the money in our capital outlay fund to fund that. And like I said, I voted for it. I supported it and proud of it, and still have the pictures on my phone of the dump trucks that you sent us when they came in. So you know, like I said, I'm not throwing it up there. I'm just saying that we can do that, and we can use this capital outlay money or county general fund monies, but it needs to be something that where we have the discretion on it before we can do that.
Well, I appreciate your concerns, and there's been other grants and money from the states come, and there's 3 or 4 listings that mayor's discretion could be used for IT departments or other issues, and even road departments. But we get in line about 5th in line. We're never considered, called to a meeting, or had any considerations about the expenditures, and we appreciate the $500,000. That's pretty good out of 10 or 12 years, 15 years, but we appreciate it. And with the shortfall on the fuel, gasoline and fuel tax, I think it's a bad year to start trying it. You say it's not a cut, brother, I believe it's a cut, any way you want to look at it. But that's simple math, and we consider it a cut where I'm from. And we appreciate your concern. We'd be glad to talk to anybody before you pass a resolution or vote on it. Any other questions I can help you with?
Let me ask you, Gary, on the maintenance of effort, does that mean we cannot cut your budget?
That means that maintenance of effort, if we reduce the maintenance of effort, that's what little the county gives me, that will affect the money I get from the state. I don't know if there's any laws or resolutions or anything like that, but I understand you're afraid I'll get more money than I need, I guess, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Now, I'm just concerned about the maintenance of effort.
I understand.
which basically tells me that we cannot cut your budget. We have to fund it at the 5-year average that we've been funding it. We can't cut it. Even if you have a reduction in gasoline tax, we'll have to make it up somewhere. We're not allowed to cut your budget the way I understand the state law.
The local portion, it will affect the state funding if the local portion is not kept at the 5-year average, correct?
Commissioner Yeager?
This is a borderline deferral motion, but are we being asked to vote on this tonight? Or are we just talking about it?
Well, there was a motion to accept, to put a cap on it, motion and a second, and then we've had discussion.
Okay, this has just been not clearly thought out and shared with everybody. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to make a motion to defer, but I'm definitely going to vote no, because I just don't think enough transparency has been shown in this process. So I was just making sure what we're going to be voting on. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the motion was to have the county law director to draft the resolution, as I stated, not to pass the resolution, but to draft it and present it to the full commission at next Monday's meeting.
May I answer one thing here? Last month, and I don't have that in front of me, but I'll be happy to distribute it again. I would not be bringing you something that cut the highway department's budget. And I shared with you, for instance, I shared with you that there was I shared all the actuals on sales tax when that budget was set at 315,000, and then it bumped up, and there were years where it was a little bit under, years where it was a little bit over. And in the 2018 year, it bumped up even more. And then when that internet sales tax came in, the highway department received well over $470-some thousand going from memory. And I shared that number in the open public forum in both budget committee and in this committee. And then, as you can see, this year, they're already the budget was set at 500,000. They're already at 612,000. And so, as I assured you at the first meeting, in this meeting, this is not a cut. It's basically a way we're all the time looking for other projects and ways to fund them. This is a way to fund it. And when I spoke to the auditors about this recently, about there not being a resolution, I asked, how are we splitting this if there is not a resolution that's authorizing it? And she said, well, I mean, once you get past that 500,000, it's not documented. That 500,000 is documented in the budget documents. Again, I wouldn't be bringing this to you if it was a cut. And, you know, in the next year with the penny on the tax rate, the county also contributes property tax to the highway department. So if you're looking at not capping it at 500,000, you're looking at a projected property tax local contribution to the highway department that does not go to the municipalities. And that amount is projected for the upcoming budget year to be about $503,000. Then you add to that the sales tax. If you add the sales tax at 500,000, if that's the cap, then you're looking at $1 million contribution outside of, there are other severance taxes that the highway department receives in addition to the now non-existent coal severance tax. Again, this goes to my point. I would not be coming to you if it was a cut to the highway department. And I want the public and you to know that. This is just a way of saying that anything that ends up being a windfall would go and be deposited on a divided basis between the general fund and the capital outlay or capital project. As Commissioner McCamey said, if the need is there in highway, then they could come back to you and ask for a portion of that from the capital outlay. That's an allowable expense. Many other, and the auditor said, there is not a requirement that the county give any property tax to the highway department. There's not a requirement that the county give any sales tax to the highway department. In other counties, it goes, you can see in Roane County, it goes to the solid waste department and it goes to animal control. I'm not advocating for one of my departments to be the recipient. I'm just looking for a way when I see us not building that fund, you all have to dip into the general fund for special projects or needs in the community. I thought this was a very fair way of handling it, where highway is guaranteed that contribution. And I think to Commissioner McCamey's motion, he's giving the highway department 100% on the front end, meaning they've got the cash flow, they know it's there, and then only after the highway department meets that 500,000 does it get split and start accumulating into those other accounts. So I think that is an enormously fair process, and it is not a cut. I went over this with Robbie as well. It is absolutely not a cut. It's only basically if there is a year where we do well, then that is an opportunity to have those funds available for other projects.
And actually said there wasn't a resolution. I think there's a motion by the county commission that I receive whatever the percentage is, and that percentage is what generates on these good days of sales tax is what generated the increase in the revenue. I don't know if you remember that or not. That's maybe before your time as different director, but that's exactly how we got to this point. And like I said earlier, when we was receiving less than a sufficient funds, they didn't volunteer and give us a bonus. We just have to learn to work with what they give us. And we've been, even the state money, when they sent those thousands of dollars up here, we didn't get any of that. But that's, you know, we understand that. But it's a cut. If it's not a cut, how are you going to divide any increase over and above what we anticipate that this good times is bringing us? You, Mr. Chairman, any other questions?
Commissioner Scott?
Thank you. I'm going to have to go with Commissioner Yeager. And one of the things that's bothering me is that it's being brought directly to operations. When we're talking about money and funding and so forth, it makes more sense to actually go to budget. But I've got an issue with the fact that, and I've brought it up before, where we've got money coming in from sales tax revenue because of what everybody's doing at home and doing their shopping and so forth. It's not a windfall. I mean, we may continue to go up in sales tax revenue. We might not. But I don't want to get excited that we've got extra money in our pockets and let's just put it over here. In saying we'll just build a bigger capital outlay fund, well, we're going to have 10 more departments standing in line saying, well, now that you've got all this extra money, I need. And I think it should be deferred back over to budget and let budget work through their discretion and let them either turn it over to operations with a draft resolution in hand, or with Jay, his blessing and so forth before going on to commission Monday night. So in the meantime, I have to vote no, unless, Mr. Chairman, we're able to defer this over to budget.
Mayor Frank?
I did take it to both committees, and this was the committee that asked to address it. So I was only responding to the actual committee who voted on it. And, I totally respect Commissioner Scott's point, but also to her point, we've set up a system where the overage does benefit only one department. none of the other departments do have the opportunity to come ask for that overage. And so that is my point, is that we do develop a split that is equitable and gives other departments the opportunity to meet their needs as well. So.
And then I think it should be taken up with budget then. They know how much money we've got coming in. They know where it needs to go. They know who's asking for what. I don't think it should be here for us to decide that number.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Yeager.
My history is only 5 years, so I may not know as much as a lot of people, but I believe that dump truck was originally turned down in budget.
Yeah,
Is
we
that
asked
right?
for, and we asked for.
Yeah,
next year.
so I mean, I remember bringing that up
Yeah.
at another meeting in front of full commission. So just because he got his dump truck,
Yeah.
don't hold that against him.
Yeah, he's in the back of the line.
Yeah, and also, this may be fine, but without Mr. Long being involved in this discussion, I just don't think it's right. So it may be fine in the long run, but I think he has to be involved in this negotiation or this discussion also.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Wandale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good discussion. I understand where Commissioner McCamey's coming from, the mayor's coming from, certainly understand where Mr. Long's coming from. I agree with everyone that, most that have spoken that Mr. Long should have some say-so and be approached and be included in the discussion. I too think this should be in budget or finance. And I understand why the mayor brought it here. Our body took it up, Mr. Chairman, and not disputing that side of it. But I do believe this should go back. I mean, the mayor pointed out it was 503 for property tax revenue that goes to the highway. And then the 612 it's at now. I mean, I guess if Mr. Long wanted to, he could argue that it's maintenance of effort already and lock himself in at 1.1 million. I don't think Mr. Long is asking that. I think he's just asking that we be fair, and we have been fair, and we did buy trucks, and I'm not holding that over him or anyone. I was honored to step up and vote yes to buy some trucks, just as I'm honored to buy EMS or sheriff's cars or whatever makes our county continue to progress. But I understand his concerns, and I hope that we can just take this issue up or defer it to the finance or the budget committee. And obviously, we've had a lot of discussion on it, but there needs to probably be some more discussion. And to the mayor's point, maybe bring in some of those other departments where we can come up with a fair and equitable process to where all departments, all boats rise when we have an uptime, and all boats, stay equal as best as possible. But that will require some planning, and I'm not going to vote yes on the way it's laid out. And I understand and I appreciate Commissioner McCamey's and the mayor's thought process, but the way it's positioned at this point with this motion, I'm going to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take this, bring it back to both committees and put the numbers I've actually pulled. I went ahead and pulled, I've already tabbed all the, in case there were questions, all the audit books. And I can put together that history and then and put that back up together for you all. And then Mr. Long can be a part of that conversation and we can revisit it. So I am happy to do that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Meredith.
Thank you. If the mayor is willing to do that, then I will make the motion to defer it either back to operations or budget or both.
I would think both would be most appropriate.
And bring back the information she's referring to.
Okay, and she's given me an affirmative head nod on that. So for the ones that can't see it.
That's fine. I couldn't see it, but I'd like to ask her, Mayor, to bring it back for the other departments as far as that goes. If she's going to do that for me, that's great, but let's do it for some other departments that had other increases throughout the last 2 years. Be fair about it.
Did everybody get to hear Gary on that, the road superintendent, his comments? Ms. Turner, we'll get you right after this discussion. Okay?
So just for clarification for the road superintendent, only the schools, so the schools, that's a required split, and then the general fund has been the only other recipient. So, I mean, if you want me to just do the whole numbers on the sales tax, I can do that very easily because there's been no other increase that's with regard to the sales tax split.
Commissioner Scott?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I apologize.
We're looking for a second to Commissioner Meredith.
Commissioner Mead, second.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please, on the defer.
Commissioner Wandale,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner McCamey,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager, Commissioner Mead,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
Chairman Isbell.
Aye. And that motion is to defer to both budget and operations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we've got Mr. Turner. He's our Anderson County Health Director online, and he's going to give us an update and take some questions. If you don't mind, Mayor, then we'll get right back to you.
Good evening, everybody. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, let me close this out. Just want to give you a little bit of update on what we're doing here at the Health Department. We continue to offer first and second dose vaccinations Monday through Friday and PRN on Saturdays. We conducted a second dose clinic this past Saturday, 3/6. We continue to do drive-through testing on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 10. And something that is, we've been offering other testing Monday through Wednesday. We have since changed that to grab and go. And basically what that means is anybody who wants to do a self-test, which would be a PCR test, they can come to the health department, get a testing kit, watch a video, follow the instructions, and they can either pack it and ship it by dropping it off at a UPS drop-off location, or they can bring it back to the health department and we will mail it in. And there's also other testing sites throughout the community, and those can be found on covid19.tn.gov under testing sites. So that's also available. The state is currently working on a plan to vaccinate shut-ins. More details to come on that. We are working with the Tennessee Commission on Aging, and we're looking to go into the HUD housing developments and provide vaccine. We're going to be sending a strike team into Charles Sievers Towers in Clinton and also Frank Callahan Towers in Oak Ridge. Hoping to get those scheduled within the next couple of weeks to do 62 and above in those two facilities. We'll probably be doing some additional work with some of the other housing authority developments. All three schools in Anderson County have received first dose vaccinations. We assisted Oak Ridge and Anderson County with their vaccination process. They, both of those school systems actually applied to be vaccinators. And we had a team of staff that went in and just assisted them. They actually organized their first dose vaccination clinics, and we assisted them. And we also, and we provided first dose vaccinations to Clinton City school teachers. We will also be involved in the second dose in both Anderson and Oak Ridge. And we will be bringing back the Clinton City school teachers for their second dose at the health department. Let's see. Phase 1C opened today. And if you aren't familiar with that, 1C is let me flip to it. It's basically persons with high-risk health conditions, individuals ages 16 and older with the following diagnosed health conditions, and I'm not going to read through those. It's women ages 16 and older who are pregnant, individuals 16 and older with immunocompromised conditions, and household residents of caregivers of children greater than 16-year-old who have some of these health conditions as well. Those specifics can be found on our plan on page 18, and our plan was updated, the state plan was updated on February 16th. And when I say 16 and up, Anderson County currently is providing the Moderna vaccine, and it is only approved for 18 and up. So those that are 16 and up would have to go either to Blount County or to another facility that's offering the Pfizer vaccine, which is approved for 16 and up. Looking at some data, just looking at the snapshot that I printed off earlier today, Anderson County has a total reported of 8,113 cases. That's about 1% of all the statewide cases. Anderson County has had a total of 177 hospitalizations, 158 deaths, and currently we have 7,751 inactive or recovered cases. Currently updated today, there are 204 active cases in Anderson County. Let's see, Anderson County over the last 7 days has had a daily case rate of 26.4 cases per 100,000 residents. And over the last 14 days, and that's going from February 22nd to March 7th, Anderson County has averaged 18.6 new cases reported per day. And for the 14 days prior to that, which was 218 to 221, the average was 34 cases. So the case numbers have decreased. Over the last 7 days, Anderson County has averaged 115 tests per day. And over the last 7 days, the average percent positive was 11.4%. If you're looking at total vaccinations, statewide, there has been 1,648,092 vaccinations. There were 7,979 reported yesterday, and there's been 200,021,485 reported since the beginning of March 1st. Statewide, it's representing 14.3% of the population that has been vaccinated. And if you go down to Anderson County has vaccinated 19,540 people. That is representing those who have had at least one dose is 16.45. So that's a little bit higher than the state average of 14.3%. And percent of the county population with a series completion, which means they've had 2 doses of Pfizer or 2 doses of Moderna. And if those that have Johnson & Johnson, 1 dose of that is 8.8% of the population. And let's see, I think that's about all that I have in terms of a report. Most of the information that I shared with you as far as data can be found at covid19.tn.gov, or it can also be found on tn.gov/health website.
Do I have any questions from anyone on the panel? Mr. Turner? Commissioner Scott?
Thank you. Mr. Turner, what types of COVID do we have?
When you say types, you're talking about the different strands?
Yeah.
Okay. That information has not been shared with me, so I'm not prepared to answer that question for you.
Mm-hmm. And why don't you have any of the Pfizer vaccines to be able to take care of anyone who's of age 16 or over?
We had Pfizer at one point. We finished our Pfizer second doses on Friday. And basically that Moderna is what the state is sending to us.
Mm-hmm. How many people do you have administering the vaccines on a daily basis?
It varies. We have at least one National Guard medic. We have 2 or 3 nurses that are temp staff. And we also bring in volunteers to help us depending on the day. And so we could have anywhere from 4 to about 6, sometimes even 8 people vaccinating.
Okay.
Depending
And
on the circumstances.
the city of Oak Ridge had offered to set up vaccine stations at the fire stations.
Mm-hmm.
Why has that not been done?
Okay. To answer your question, right now we are providing vaccinations at the health department. We are looking at setting up through the Tennessee Board of Regents. This has not been finalized, but it would be a supplement to the health department. It would operate outside of the health department hours, and that would be at a location in Oak Ridge. Right now, I went through and looked just at the vaccine locator, including the health department. There are 12 facilities that are currently offering vaccination, and a lot of those are actually in Oak Ridge. And allocations to these different locations are based on the availability of vaccine and things of that nature. And I'm sure that more will be standing up as more and more vaccine becomes available to the state of Tennessee. But right now, if you go to the vaccine locator, like I said, I found 12 other locations, some of which are located in Oak Ridge. The Walmart in Clinton Drug Store, Cherokee Health Systems, Anderson County Health Department, Hoskins Drug Store. Let's see. Muncie's Pharmacy in Oak Ridge, the Free Medical Clinic in Oak Ridge, Family Clinic of Oak Ridge has vaccine or is a vaccine distributor.
And I appreciate you going
Max
through the reading.
Pharmacy in Oak Ridge.
I appreciate you reading the list off. But one other question for you is, are you going to schedule anything with the senior centers, the senior center in Anderson County as well as Oak Ridge, to ensure the folks that are 60 and over, that are 55 and over in the city of Oak Ridge, that they're able to get the vaccines?
That's one of the things that we're working on right now, but I don't have any real details to share with you at this time. But yes, we are working with the senior centers, and we also are working with the HUD housing developments.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chair.
Commissioner Scott. Has anyone got any other questions for Mr. Turner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Wandale.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Charles, for coming on and sharing the information. A question I had is, and you've kind of covered it, but I'm just curious, how many days do we give shots at Anderson County Health Department? COVID shots?
We're generally on, as a general rule, 5 days a week. Sometimes we're doing extended hours, and we're also providing vaccinations on Saturdays on a PRN basis. And a lot of that depends on the vaccine shipment that we get. And, we're trying to get the vaccine in arms And if we've got generally, more than what we can give on the following Monday, and when we're going to receive our next shipment, we typically do extended hours or we do Saturday clinics.
Then follow-up question is, when someone wants to set an appointment to get that shot at the Anderson County Health Department, they're required to go to the state and go online to get a time and date. Is that correct?
Correct. They can register by going to the covid19.tn.gov website. Anderson County had been working a waiting list where people had signed up. We basically went through that waiting list. We've called all the people on the list multiple times, and we are transitioning tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to a new system called VRAS, which is Vaccine Registry Administration System. And they will be able to register on that covid19.tn.gov website for that. There will no longer be a waiting list. They will be able to register for appointments based on the availability of appointments at the health department through that website and through that program.
So I appreciate you explaining that, because I think a lot of times people have questions and it's not necessarily the Anderson County Health Department's issue with getting things set up. But just a quick story. I went to the health department a week or so ago to get a birth certificate for one of my children, and it took 10, 15 minutes, what have you. But I was intrigued that there was one car sitting out there in the parking lot, and I asked the nurse, "What is this for?" And they said it was to give shot. And it surprised me, in the 15 to 20 minutes I was there was this one car sitting there. And I thought, surely there's got to be more people that want to get the shot than one car. And it kind of just, and I guess my question to follow up, it sounds like it's going to be addressed with the new, the system you mentioned, but we're not losing any shots, are we? Because we don't have people coming in, or it's not meeting it seems like there's a disconnect between the state and Anderson County to schedule properly. And I find it hard to believe that one car can be setting to get a shot in our county for so long and no other cars following up. Now, I could have been there at the end of time. I don't know, but I'm interested in your response.
Well, as a general rule, we schedule 20 per half hour. So that's 40 vaccinations an hour. That's basically what our capacity is as a general rule. We have exceeded that capacity. In fact, Friday, we gave 522 second doses of Pfizer.
Awesome.
We put 180 people through in the first hour and a half Friday.
Wow.
But we had people out in the streets. We had 3 lanes coming in to the health department, to the testing or to the vaccination tent, and we had 2 lanes going out. We can't do that every day at the health department because we're providing birth certificates like you came in for. We also are providing our other everyday services. But as a general rule, we schedule 20 per half hour. Second doses go a little bit faster, so we can kind of increase that a little bit. But one of the issues we had when we were doing our testing is we weren't doing it by appointment, and just having the number of cars, which is a very dangerous situation, out on the shoulder in front of the health department. And we're trying to mitigate that with our scheduling of appointments. But I can't explain what went on when you were there, but as a general rule, people come in early. Because we didn't have 180 people scheduled in the first hour and a half. So a lot of people came in early, and we did everything we could to accommodate them and get them through and do it as quickly as possible. Most days we don't even stop for lunch. We rotate lunches, but some days we do vaccinate from 9 to 12 and then 1 to 4. And our general throughput is 20 per half hour or 40 an hour.
And to be fair, Charles, I was there late, right around the 4 o'clock hour. Your team may have already gave out several hundred, and I didn't know it. So I don't want to imply that no one's doing anything. It caught me odd. But these numbers you just gave me, the 520 and that's awesome. And you're obviously doing a great job, and your staff was good. I got my birth certificate, and all went well. So thanks for the updates, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Denenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, you're quite welcome. And just
Commissioner Denenberg, go ahead. I think Mr. Turner was speaking, but go ahead, Commissioner Denenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Turner, most of the other questions that I had, you have already answered. But I was very curious if you have heard from the state as to when the Johnson & Johnson vaccine will be available to Anderson County for vaccination.
I have not, and I don't know if the health department will receive Johnson & Johnson. In my previous comments about looking at it will not be ran by the health department, but it will be an extension of the health department, and we will support that in the sense that we will store vaccine for it for a location in Oak Ridge. If that comes to fruition, that particular clinic will be offering the Johnson & Johnson. But as far as the health department is concerned, or who in the community has Johnson & Johnson, that is not information that has been shared with us at the local level.
Well, then I need to ask you one other question. If one of these other entities that's providing vaccination, do they go through you to obtain the actual vaccine?
They do not. They have to apply through the state of Tennessee to become a vaccine provider.
Right.
And the state then approves them based on the criteria that they have set,
Right.
Being able to store it, being able to manage it, and it is shipped directly to them, such as Muncie's Pharmacy in Oak Ridge, Kroger's, Walmart. That's all sent directly to them. And some of the drugstores, for example, Walmart, it's a federal program. The state was providing some vaccine to Walmarts, but there is a federal program now, and a lot of the Walmarts are under the federal program.
Well, what prompted my question was when you said that you would be storing the vaccine for an entity other than the health department.
This particular clinic is not a private pharmacy or a private doctor's office. It would be through the state of Tennessee, and it would be an extension of the health department, though okay. It would not be staffed by health department personnel. And our responsibility at the local health department would be to store the vaccine. We would be responsible for releasing it to them and receiving it back, and making sure that the temperatures, there's been no excursions and things like that in temperature.
Okay, well, thank you. And the very last question, on the second doses, have people been diligent as far as coming in at their appointed time to receive the second dose? Or are you having to call to remind people?
For the most part, yes. There are some that we have to reschedule for various reasons to another time, and some that we have had to call and remind. But for the most part, they are being diligent about coming back for their second dose.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Turner, Commissioner Denenberg, Commissioner Val, myself, we've been trying to work with another of the pharmaceutical providers, such as Muncie's, to come to the north end of the county to give and to work with, like, Main Street Baptist Church, which has got a large parking lot. Myself, I went over to Knoxville and went through the Paragon system at Wallace Memorial, and there was a huge line. When I got there, it was like 150 cars, but so efficient. In 35 minutes, I had my inoculation and sat there for 15 minutes. But we feel like that we really need to reach out, to the northern part of the county. We've got New River, we've got Briceville and those areas. And what can we do through the health department to help get something like that set up?
Well, right now we're looking to set up possibly an off-site location, but it will be in the Clinton area because that's primarily the state is wanting the health department to get back to the health department business. We would be involved. It would be our clinic, but we would look at putting that in Clinton because it's kind of a central location to all of these different areas. People in Briceville should have access to Ethra transportation, things of that nature. And it's something that we could look at in the future of possibly doing something. But right now, we're primarily focusing on, what we're doing at the health department and looking at the potential of doing an off-site location in the Clinton area. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And regardless of where you stand it up, I mean, obviously the people who get an appointment could be more from that area, but we could not limit it just to the Briceville area. We couldn't limit it to, it would be through the appointment system, and we would have to, it would kind of like what we're doing now with the scheduling of appointments at the health department through the COVID-19.tn.gov website.
Okay, but if we had a pharmaceutical sponsor like Muncie's, we would just work directly through Muncie's Pharmacy. Is that correct? If we did one on the north end of the county? I mean, anybody would be welcome to come because we'd have to have, pretty close numbers before we got the vaccine, I'm assuming.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if Muncie did the vaccination, they would, would stand it up and be able to, I guess, would have to staff it and things of that nature. As the general rule, we've provided guidance and answered questions for private pharmacies, particularly when you're dealing with, Pfizer vaccine and the storage that's involved in that. We've, assisted them in answering questions and things of that nature. But as a general rule, it's their responsibility to store it, manage it, maintain it. And we don't share, we have been told by the state that we can't share, because of HIPAA, we can't share lists and numbers with the private pharmacies and vice versa. So,
I understand.
We're willing to help in any way we can. We're still, as a general rule, we're trying to get our manpower up to where we can move to possibly an offsite and increase our throughput at that offsite and offer that 5 days a week. And again, sometimes on Saturday, depending, but we would be able to increase our throughput as well as increase the time that we could provide vaccinations, because right now on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're limited to the afternoon hours of 1 to 4 or 1 to extended hours because we're doing testing and other things in those Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. So
The parking lot's always full when I come through. And I mean, I'm sure you're doing everything you can do with the limited amount of space you've got. And it's very efficient for what, the space you have from what I can.
Right. We are trying to maximize that and do everything we can. Or doing vaccine available, we are looking at an off-site location in the Clinton area.
Okay. Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. You made a comment saying that you've got, Mr. Turner, you've got National Guard and volunteers on site working with you. If you've got one person from the National Guard, it doesn't make sense that you can't get 10 more to go out to Rocky Top, Briceville area and set up a tent so that the folks up there don't have to worry about calling Ethra and hoping that the bus shows up.
Well, you would think that, but right now, the National Guard is basically in the process of increasing their manpower, but that has, that's not at its full potential. So in logic's term, yes, you would think that, but right now they're trying to staff 189 counties plus your metropolitan areas, and not 189 counties plus your metropolitan areas. So
well, but that goes back to the fire departments and EMS. And, with the fire departments, you've got EMTs that are working there, whether they're from the volunteer fire departments or from the municipalities.
The state of Tennessee is actually bringing on some EMTs to work in pods during their off hours. All these things are in process, but they're not fully executed. And yes,
but I'm bringing
have volunteers, but volunteers, they might work half a day one day, and that's the only time that they can work. So we have to have a consistent staffing pattern in order to do some of this stuff.
Well, I'm sure if you spoke to the chiefs of the fire departments or spoke to somebody from the city of Rocky Top, you'd probably find that you'd have more than enough volunteers to help out.
Commissioner Scott, the Oak Ridge Rotary Club supports the Briceville area quite a bit. And with Dr. Bunick, those are the ones that's actually willing to come up and help administrate the vaccine. It's just finding a pharmacy sponsor is what we're looking for now. And then we've got, a location to do it. It's just putting all this stuff together, and we really appreciate everybody's help and really appreciate Mr. Turner's time here tonight and calling in and staying late because this is all beneficial information. We sure appreciate it.
Well, you're quite welcome.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you. And then we'll move on. Mayor, are you still available?
Yes, sir. And thank you to Charles and all the hardworking folks at the health department. And I know he appreciates your support, and the team does up there. They have, I guess you can see Charles looks a little bit tired. No offense, Charles, but your eyes are kind of drooping.
Hey, it's 12 hours a day plus. So, but anyway, I appreciate your support, and I hope you all have a blessed rest of your evening and meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, before I get back to my agenda items, I do try to be on the twice a week TEMA calls about what's going on. And I did not get to be on Thursday's call because we had the email issues here in government. But on Tuesday's call to Commissioner Disnenberg's question, they did address the Johnson & Johnson. The state had received a small allocation, and they were still working with their medical director and team and then senior leadership on the allocations. They did note that I believe some of the Walmarts and Sam Clubs had received some, but they did let us all know as mayors and EMA directors and officials across the state that this is going to be much like the Moderna and Pfizer process, where they started releasing them, but then it took a while to ramp up the allocations. And so they did let us know that it was probably going to be a little, let's see, I can read a quote from them. They said the distribution, there would be a hold off as far as distribution goes for the next few weeks as they ramp up Johnson & Johnson production. So I'm more than happy to let you all know if that changes on the next TEMA call, and if there's any other indicators for Commissioner Disnenberg.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And it would just be such a great help if the Johnson & Johnson was more readily available, because that way, especially trying to organize something up in the northern part of the county, would be so much more efficient if it was just a one-shot situation. But thanks very much, and just let us know. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. The next item I had on my agenda is I included in the packet a kind of just a concept. This did not involve any kind of expenditure of funds. And actually, the architect has worked with the city of Clinton. This was just an idea. If you have been to our emergency operations center, you have seen it is a subpar facility and it does not meet ADA requirements. And by that, I mean, you have to actually use the stairs to get in there to be at the emergency operations center. And so one of the things that you may be familiar with from a long time ago is that Clinton had originally had plans to co-locate a fire station next to the industries in the far end of Clinton. And when they were doing a study of response times, they realized that it did not make sense to put their station at the end of the boundary. It made more sense to do it in where they could radially or in a radius provide better response. So on this particular idea, it would be a cost share where your EOC would occupy either and we just did it like a general discussion talking about either the first floor or second floor would be your actual emergency operations center in the event of an emergency and when those EOCs have to be activated. And then the second could be training for volunteer fire departments or I think originally when we discussed this, Chief Lucas looked at this as maybe being another location for dispatch. But then the other part would be an actual fire bays for the city of Clinton. And that would not require them to man it. But if it ever needed to be manned, we would have built in there the showers and the bathrooms that also would serve the EOC. So it's a cost sharing idea that would serve both. The city manager did reach out to SL because SL had donated the land for a future station, and SL was in agreement to that this would meet exactly, what they would look for. They were looking for a presence up there. This would be a location where emergency management could put their hazmat truck. And so I'm just here requesting authorization just to engage in official dialogue in terms of the feasibility of this happening, which would mean outreach to the council. What might this look like? Is it an idea that they would truly like to pursue? I would come back to you. Is it something you would really like to pursue? But this would I don't like to be out there on my own without your authorization. This would just authorize me to enter into those official discussions about the feasibility of such a project.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Trick.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Meredith, second by Commissioner Yeager. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Wandale,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner McCamey,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager,
Aye.
Commissioner Meade.
Great thanks to them for today, the difference that you made.
Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
Chairman Isbell.
Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Before we move on, Mayor, I've had everybody that's been here since about 5 o'clock and I hadn't given them a break yet. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break and come back. the meeting back to order. Go ahead, Mayor.
Yes, just a couple of quick updates. Roger, I believe he's still there unless he bailed on us.
No, he's
Is
here.
Okay, Roger has a ESG project progress that was requested by Commissioner Yeager at last month's operations meeting.
Okay, progress report. It actually,
Yeah, push the button. Yeah.
okay. All right. This afternoon, I'd actually had a meeting with Jeff Allred, which is their project manager, last week. This is kind of where we're at right now. Pretty much, so basically everything's kind of taken care of. We do actually lack some courthouse controls. That's kind of like the thermostats and stuff. HVAC, we lack a little bit here at the courthouse. The detention facility controls, we're about 80%. The HVAC's about 90%. Detention facility cameras, estimating about 65% done. Health department controls, we just actually supposed to meet with the health department tomorrow. They've been so busy, it's just been hard to get in to do anything, but Jolly building controls, we're at about 94%. We're having to order another board where we can kind of tie the two buildings together to make those kind of read one another. HVAC system over there is at about 97%. Jolly Building Renovations is right at 99%. There's a few little things we went through last week. I went from the 5th floor down to the basement, talked to the different department heads, made sure everybody was kind of pacified, satisfied to a certain extent. Just like I said, this back checklist, y'all been through it. It's just kind of sewing everything back up. Basically, we've got everything done. I'd say within the next, if we can get the control systems in and IT is working with ESG, I'd say we should be done with everything probably relatively, except for the jail, probably 3 weeks. Just an educated guess. All right.
Any questions from the panel?
Mr. Chairman, he cut out at the very last part where he was saying when he thought they'd be done.
What I was saying, probably educated guess, probably within the next 3 weeks, if we can get some of the components in. Like I said, IT is working with ESG. We had to buy some kind of board above my head. It's through IT and ESG. I'm just saying the communication part of it, setting all the system up. Yes, this is probably still going to go on for another probably 6 months of fine tuning everything, but
That's cool.
as of right now, probably I educated guess that probably like I said, probably 3 weeks.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Roger.
Any more questions?
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. And Mayor, if you can stick around there, because under old business, I want to talk a little bit about the homeless virtual meeting you got coming up.
Sure. Okay, the next is an update on the archives witness rooms progress. As you all probably saw in the courthouse, and then I also sent you a copy of an email that was sent to all the county team here. The TVA Credit Union did consolidate their operation, and so now they are right across the street in one facility on Leinert Street here in Clinton. And so that opened up those rooms. The next phase in the project, we've met and done some walkthroughs with architect Bill Blankenship. And I distributed to you all via email a draft concept plan. I say draft because there's still a couple of other tweaks. And what we've worked with the architect on is because we need the archives on, slab grade, bottom floor because of the weight, we're looking at moving. Well, let me back up. The interior portion of the clerk's office is really where there is some room to partially house archives. So in working with the architect, what we're looking at doing is moving the clerk's office down further towards the rear of the building. And I sent an email to you all where I noted that accomplished a couple things. One, with a new single secure entry, this will give citizens that are coming in a straight shot to the clerk's office or virtually straight shot. And they are the #1 traffic generator in the courthouse. And then that would co-locate the archives next to them. So in the plan I sent you, archives is not going to require a lot of interior work. What is now Jeff Cole's, the clerk's office, would become the archives, and Jeff's personal office would be the archives, archivist's actual office, and then that large open space would house all the archives. So the interior is just paneling, and there's not major walls on the interior that require demolition. But that's where we are so far, and we'll just keep moving along. It seems like progress is now quicker. So hopefully, I'll have even more news to report to you next month on that particular progress. The Wolf Valley Convenience Center, we have now received the title. Not the title, the complete survey, and then also the phase 1 environmental. The phase 1 environmental did note one small issue that is not anything existing on the property. It is in regards to a culvert that has drained onto the property. Once we buy the property, we will have to address that culvert and move it. But because it did have to be reported, I did consult with Mr. Yeager on this, and he agreed that we needed to be better safe than sorry. So we're just doing some limited surface soil sampling, and we did request expedited turnaround on that when I told them that we're working towards a closing date. Geoservices did not charge us anything extra for an expedited turnaround. My understanding is they were out there today, or that was on their work plan. And the only extra charge for an expedited was with the lab itself. And I think that was around $250, $200 to $250 for that expedited. And once that is back, we will lock in the closing date. I reached out to the parties about the go ahead and locking this in for the April 9th. I have not heard a confirmation back from them. So that all happened during the email issues, but hopefully with this expedited surface soil sampling, we'll be able to do this a little bit earlier than April 9th. So that's the update on where we are with that. I don't know if there are any questions on that particular item. Okay, and then the last is just the senior center renovations progress. All the new flooring is in. Most of the painting is done. It looks really great. Even just as you recall, for those of you that took a tour, the ceiling was black and it made the large room really dark in there. All of that's been painted. The new colors are up. Everything's looking good. And we have no issues to report there. So that should be wrapping up pretty soon. And the only other update I have that I did not put on there is just a real quick update for you all with regard to the Census Bureau. I know that last month you authorized the Operations Committee to be your committee to work on redistricting. Local governments, this was probably in your inbox from county services as well, but just in case you missed it, local governments will have a shorter window to finish drawing their new maps for the 2022 elections based on a recent announcement from the U.S. Census Bureau that it will publicly release redistricting data, and that's the data used to redraw the voting districts, on September 30th, 2021. That is 2 months later than their original estimate of July 2021. But I'll continue to monitor this for you and keep you apprised of the progress or if there's any changes made on that census data.
Okay, any questions to the mayor? By the way, Commissioner Meade has had to leave the meeting to be with his wife for her 72nd birthday. Congratulations and happy birthday. We'll move on with no other questions to the mayor at the present time to Tennessee Clean Act. And this was a request from Andersonville resident, Oak Ridge resident, Patricia Treese, and Rachel Buell from Oak Ridge. Patricia is from Andersonville. And what this is the Senate Bill 0152 and House Bill 0174. This bill creates a new commission and enacts other provisions with a stated legislative intent of developing and implementing a comprehensive approach to addressing litter in this state. Prior to the development of programs by the commission and the submission of reports by the commission. As discussed below, the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations will research, evaluate, and develop recommendations in order to determine the most effective methods and actions necessary to effectuate the purposes of this bill. This bill creates a Tennessee Clean Commission that consists of 13 state residents as follows. Basically what it is just a new committee to deal with litter and cleaning up our state. And what they're asking is for a letter of, or a resolution of support to send to our state representative to try to get this done. Any comments?
I make a motion to provide that letter.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
So, I was 35.
Motion by Commissioner Wandell, second by Commissioner Anderson. Any discussion on the motion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Wandell,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner McCamey,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager,
Aye.
Commissioner Meade, Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
Chairman Isbell.
Aye. Thank you. The next is a request for office space in the Dark Building by Commissioner Yeager.
We'll have to delay that for another month or so.
All right, next is the sales tax resolution requested by Commissioner McCamey.
Chairman Isabel, that was, you all had requested for me to come back with that information. And so that was the information I actually put under the mayor's report.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes.
All right, the next is Ben's Mobile Home Park requested by Commissioner Wandell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I wanted to find out, I don't know if the mayor or Jay Yeager has any updates. I kind of going to sit still and see if they got anything they could share before I ask any questions.
Commissioner Wandell, I don't have anything at this time. I know the mayor is attempting to set up a meeting, and I'm sure she'll do that. She's got a lot on her plate, and we're both very concerned about this issue. I told you before, as soon as I know anything, I'll contact you by email or text, and I promise to do that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wandell, Danny has been on all night and he said he sent me a text that he was getting kicked off. So I don't know if it was just the length of time he was on or what. So I don't know where he has gone. They have been working on this. I'm aware that TDEC is also taking an active and engaged role in addressing these issues. I did, one of the things Margie and I did meet with Jay and go over a lot of these issues and the existing violations. Margie is getting all of those to Jay. I know that part of the process is once you get no remediation, then we reach the end of the rope, so to speak, and then it goes to a litigation standpoint. So Jay did ask that whatever she had that was ready to be triggered in that regard, that she get to him. One of the things that is part of an issue on, I think, one of the particular cases that you're talking about, Commissioner Wandale, is that there is a debate between the tenant and the landholder regarding who is responsible. And there has been a flurry of letters. I believe you've been copied on them. I've been copied on them. CUB's been copied, the whole world. Jay's been copied on them. And I don't know of a way, and Jay and I briefly discussed this as well. We don't know of a way to intervene into the contractual obligation between the tenant and the landlord. But I do know that Danny did confirm with me that TDEC was definitely on top of it. Now, I don't know what that means to the extent that, what actions they are taking, but I guess part of that will be triggering a decision on who is responsible. So I would assume that would be part of their investigative process from a TDEC standpoint.
Thanks, Mayor, and I appreciate it. I tried to get Danny earlier, but he was on a call. So I understand we can't really get involved with any contractual obligations between the so-called tenant and the landowner. But I guess my concern is what's happening is TDEC has apparently issued some kind of statement towards the landowner asking him to clean up this exposed sewer in and around the tenant's area, which again, from my understanding, is not the tenant's sewer. It's a neighbor's sewer that happens to flow down to her location. So the tenant has been asked is actually being evicted and taken to court. And that's the part that bothers me. And I know it does you and Jay. I did call the state today. And as I've said before, I think it's time that as a county, and I know Danny and Marjorie, I guess I'm curious, how many violations are currently pending at Ben's mobile home park, if we had to guess?
Going from memory, 11, but I do know 2 of the fire. I talked to Margie last week. I think 2 of the structures that had burned have been demolished. I think that leaves 3, but then there are other violations. I did meet with Mr. Graves and went over a lot of the road issues. He has raised some questions with me about the history on the roads. He produced a motion where there was an intent by the county to take in the roads. And this is going to be something where I'm going to have to do some more research because, the road process So one of the things I did not understand that I just finally came to understand, and I apologize for being ignorant in this regard, that particular area was actually built and created as a subdivision. And I was under the impression that it was under the statutes. And this is, again, I completely was ignorant on this. I thought it was, under like a mobile home park. And it is not. It was actually platted as a subdivision. And so now some of the challenges or questions he has raised to me are in regards to the road and the roadways. So when we authorize a subdivision in Anderson County, the developers are required to put up a performance bond for the roads, and then that does convert to a maintenance bond. And so we do have another one of the developers, longstanding, another development down on Highway 61 that they have renewed their bond on that particular project for, I want to say 20 years or 22 years or something like that. On this particular one, we do not have any bond documents. And so I'm now questioning why this wasn't, because he's challenging, issues about maintaining the roads and who's responsible. And so the question is, well, if they did not meet the standards, why did the county not cash the bonds and bring the roads up to standards so that the people in that particular subdivision were not suffering for the last 30 years, if that makes sense? Mm-hmm. And so I'm in the process of doing some more investigation and research on that. But I completely agree with you that we've far past reached the tipping point where we need to address the whole area in a global way. And so it's one step at a time.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. It's one step at a time, and I know things don't happen quickly, but I definitely want to get with the law director and you and figure out what options are available to Anderson County in the way of state TCA codes that would apply to this situation, because I believe they exist, and I believe we can utilize certain things. I understand the complexities of it with some properties being sold to homeowners and then some being rented and all the other nuances that may or may not exist. That's even more of the reason I want to try to figure out a way to get some type of resolution for everyone who does pay their taxes, and they do deserve roads. And
Yes.
I understand there's sewer that runs through some of the roads in terms of pipes, and CUB doesn't know who, and we've come a long way in a long time. At one time we had an open sewer pit there, and I was told by a previous mayor, not you, and that we would never get rid of that sewer pit. Well, CUB stepped up and we were able to get rid of the open sewer pit, which was less than 10 feet away from a homeowner's front door. So I believe where there's a will, there's a way, and I'd like to get with Jay and maybe he can point me to the right people in at state, whether it's State Representative Reagan or we have to go talk to Mr. McNally and Lieutenant Governor and see what we can do. But I think there's been enough issues at Ben's mobile home park for us as a county to start putting some real teeth into the zoning and making sure that this location is uphold to the same requirements as the rest of the county. And I think that's the fair thing to do. And if Mr. Graves has ideas, I'm all ears, love to talk to him and see how we can come to some type of resolution to meet everybody's needs.
Well, and one of the things that I wanted to suggest, and, I would be happy to work with Jay on this might be a scenario where we look at engaging just on a contract basis, a consultant to help us address this and stay devoted to it.
Yeah.
Because as you know, I mean, for instance, Thursday and Friday, everything I had planned kind of went sideways and dealing with IT issues. And I know he's the same way. He has different things that come in front of him. And this is an area where with this, it's a web of issues and the various forms of ownership, with some individuals owning a lot of lots and individual families owning both the structure and the land, some only leasing the structure. I think it would warrant an expenditure, and it would get a return on the investment if we looked into something like that. And I'm happy to get with Jay, and if you want to make that in the form of a motion, I would be happy to work with him and come up with some names and see if we couldn't get some devoted professional assistance on this.
Well, I'd be happy to do that. I guess one quick question and this is just open discussion, would it make sense that we forward this subject to the legislative committee and let them meet and make that decision, or would you think it'd just be best to go ahead and make the decision here with what your recommendation might be to get some outside assistance?
Well, I think, if you look at some very complex, so for instance, if you look over in Oak Ridge where they had a lot of issues with one particular development, the law doesn't always make sense sometimes, and there's a lot of nuances and loopholes. And that's why I'm saying if we had someone maybe who has been around the block, so to speak, with a situation like this, where they could give us the plan of action, kind of like when you hire an engineer to look at your sewer system. It's different than having the guys that normally maintain it. It's good to get professional help to come in and say, what are your issues? And then here's the to-do list of what you need to do to take care of it. And so I think we can get that just by doing some groundwork and find that person or a choice of persons to assist us get that done.
So maybe a motion to allow the mayor and the law director to retain an outside legal entity to help address the Ben mobile home zoning issues, something to that effect?
Yes. And Jay, I want to chime in here. And it doesn't have to be an attorney. It may be some consulting firm that's dealt with this. I'm not talking about necessarily another lawyer, but someone who's experienced in what all of the laws are, the tenant laws, the land law, as they marry up with our zoning resolution.
We may have to just look at it environmentalists first and see what they see. It's probably going to be a combination of professionals to address this issue. And I'm not sure if we need another lawyer or not, but we need somebody to certainly take a look at it right now and try to find fault or find issues and find resolutions on the various problems there. But if you would, just make a motion that myself and the mayor work together to find the appropriate consultant, and we'll come back to budget with the money that's needed. We'll go that route, but we'll try to get some estimates right now and try to figure exactly which type of consultant we need initially. And again, it may be a variety of different people to work on it, but if you can do that kind of authorization motion, then we'll start working with it and we'll bring you back an estimate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. The next question is what kind of money we talking about? I didn't want to, but that makes perfect sense. So before I make the motion, I'll just say this. I'm hopeful that Mr. Graves will allow the tenants that he's asking to vacate and take to court. I'm hopeful that he'll find it amenable to move that trailer, which is in the area of the sewer that's running down the hill, to one of the locations that the trailers have been burned out. We have, I think, 5 or 6 in there. And, you know, it would be really nice if he could do that and get them relocated. They want to stay there. They're willing to pay their rent. They have paid the rent, but so I'm hopeful that could be a consideration on Mr. Gray's part. I know there's a little cost in it, but I think that would be a solution to some of what's going on. So with that said, I'll make a motion that we allow the mayor and law director to approach outside consultants and report back with the cost and the types of consultants needed to address bin mobile home related issues. I so move.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion by Commissioner Wandell, seconded by Commissioner Meredith. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Wandell,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner McCamey,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
Chairman Isbell.
Aye. Motion passes unanimous. The next is the resolution. You want to come forward, Commissioner Val? We took this up in intergovernmental.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
is the mayor still available?
she
Yes,
is.
sir.
I have a question about before she gets away there, you told us last month you were going to use some of the money in the litter grant to hire an outside firm to pick up some garbage. How's that working?
Okay, well, no, what I was sharing is we normally allocate what the state allows us to do some supplemental pickup. Because we cannot give the solid waste department just a direct transfer of funds from the general fund, what I took to budget committee was additional litter pickup in the amount of $6,500, because that allows us to trigger that immediately without exceeding any limits that would trigger a bid. And so I did make that request of budget committee, and they did approve it, and that's going to full commission on Monday.
Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need that back?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Intergovernmental Committee met before your all's meeting tonight, and on behalf of Commissioner Creasy, I was proud to read this resolution the Intergovernmental Committee passed to this committee. And before I read it, I would ask that the people of the county keep Commissioner Creasy and his wife in their prayers tonight. The resolution he drafted says, whereas the Y-12 National Security Complex, an enriched uranium processing facility, is located in the city of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and whereas the city of Oak Ridge makes up a large part of the Anderson County economic base, and whereas the Y-12 plant has a long and standing history of providing a secure and safe working environment for the processing of enriched uranium, and whereas the National Nuclear Security Administration, NNSA, recently awarded a 3-year sole source contract to Nuclear Fuel Services, NFS, of Erwin, Tennessee, for the design and demonstration of highly enriched uranium, HEUs, conversion and purification. And whereas the city government of Oak Ridge has opposed moving this work of national importance from the secure and safe operations of the Y-12 plant. Now be it resolved that in regular session on March 15, 2021, the Anderson County Commission is in full and unconditional support of the city of Oak Ridge's government in opposing the transfer of uranium processing, and stand firmly behind the words of Oak Ridge Mayor Warren Gooch when he said chemical processing of uranium has been one of the core capabilities of Y-12, and it is clear that this work could and should continue to be performed at Y-12, where the highly skilled workforce and taxpayer-funded security measures are already in place. So we would ask the Operations Committee also pass that tonight on the full commission, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a motion to support?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I had a motion by Commissioner McCamey, seconded by Commissioner Scott. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question for the law director or the mayor that she may know as well. If this was to move, and I'm totally opposed to it, if it was to move to Unicoi County and Nuclear Fuel Services, I think it's a $57 million piece of business. Would DOE be obligated to pay Unicoi County payment in lieu of taxes as well? I'm just curious.
Commissioner Wandale, I'm not certain right now. I did share the newspaper article from the Irwin Record where they've already been awarded that bid. So it's in full swing and they're gearing up. My understanding is they're going to start in April with this process at NFS, but I can find out if there's going to be any type of payment in lieu of taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a follow-up question since Jay answered that. Jay, with that, hypothetically, well, obviously it sounds like it's going to move, but if it does move, do we have any recourse as the county, since we enter in an agreement for payment in lieu of taxes for a certain amount of money, do we have any recourse to go back and ask for more since they've taken some of the funding away from our locality?
No, I don't think that's related. The payment in lieu of tax is a payment in lieu of property tax. I can't see a way to ask for more money under those circumstances. Not right off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Wandale,
Aye.
Commissioner Meredith,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner McCamey,
Aye.
Mr. Yeager,
Aye.
Mr. Scott,
Aye.
Chairman Isbell.
Aye. Motion passes unanimous. The next, we got new business. We have any new business come before this commission? I would like to say at this time to congratulate Commissioner Wandale and commend his daughter. I always like to do that on our student athletes that came from here. You know, we do that for the high schools. She has, I'm assuming she's finishing her career at Maryville College with 2 championships and been on the dean's list. So congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next is old business. Do we have any old business to come before this committee? If not, I'd like for Commissioner Wandale. Go ahead.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to say a quick shout out to all those residents that are out there picking up the trash, posting it on Facebook. I'm sorry I don't have all the names, but I've been very, very humbled and impressed by those individuals. And I just want to thank them for taking the time. Also want to thank the Sheriff's Department. I know they're actively out there helping the best they can with what resources we have. And I want to tip my hat to the sheriff. And I know our Commissioner Sharp's always been involved with that. And I just want to thank everybody for doing that. And I'm going to try to get out there and pick up some myself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good point, because I've seen that same thing myself. I mean, some really, an older gentleman on 25W just out there with a shovel and picking up stuff. So we commend all those. Good point. Under old business is we're going to have another homeless virtual workshop. And then over the weekend, since last Friday and this weekend, myself and the mayor both have just been attacked over what's been going over in South Clinton. I didn't have anything to do with the location, although, you know, out of the operations committee is we formed this task force. This task force was to actually talk about the homeless situation that we have in the county, and we definitely have one, and we just can't turn a blind eye to it. Mayor, would you like to talk about our virtual meeting that we've got coming up?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. It is Thursday at 6:30, and this is a continuation of the joint workshop that we held with the county commissioners and Torch, the Trinity Outreach Center, and Tennessee Valley Coalition for the Homeless. And we only got to, I think, the first 4 items on the previous agenda. So we all agreed at that January 14th meeting to come back together and continue the conversation about what we can do to collaborate to address and prevent homelessness in the community. So that information is posted on the county's website, and that will move forward as planned. And also, if folks have missed it, I believe Leanne posted this on the website already. There is a new link that is out. As we know, with the moratorium on evictions, what we heard at that first workshop is that there is an expected increase in evictions and homelessness. And the Tennessee Housing Development Agency has a new website. You can, if you just type in thdA.org, you can go there, and they have all the information about the funds that are going to be available. I'm trying to think when that started. The applications opened up on March the 1st. They do have a call center as well. And if you call that call center, that phone number is 615-815-2200, and then press 1. You will be assisted on any question and direction for the rent relief. And this is all COVID funding that has come down to the state of Tennessee. And so I would just encourage folks to direct anyone with questions there. And again, I believe Leanne, I haven't gotten to check, but I believe she was putting both the phone number and the portal for folks to be able to connect people as well.
One thing that I learned today, that this coalition now that's established itself over in South Clinton, it's not really a shelter. It's an organization. And one of the things they've done so far is for Anderson County residents have spent like $12,000 to pay utility bills. If it hadn't been for that organization, you can imagine $12,000 in utility bills they paid for Anderson County residents. How many people would have their lights cut off? So, I think we're looking at these people in the wrong way. Nobody wants a homeless shelter in their neighborhood, and this is not really a homeless shelter, and that's what we've had meetings at the city of Rocky Top, Commissioner Val and myself, with these people. But the programs they've got set up is, they are going to wash people's clothes for them. We're going to help them out, and they'll feed them. And maybe in our instance in Rocky Top, if we had one there, it would keep them from panhandling at the restaurants, because we see that a lot. But the biggest thing is to be able to help them out with the rent relief and with the utility bills, and to make sure these are working people that a lot of people have been laid off, and because of the COVID. So it's a resource that we can really embrace if we look at it more in a enlightened way, instead of just saying that it's going to be a homeless shelter with a bunch of drug addicts hanging out. But let's look at the positive things that are doing for Anderson County, and I encourage everyone to be in on this virtual meeting and get some firsthand knowledge. Do we have anything else to come before this committee? Commissioner Val.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Operations Committee last month asked a few questions of the Fire Commission, and I am very proud to serve the Fire Commission as chairman. And we addressed those questions and those concerns, and I'll give you their answers. And I think on some of the issues, they had even more questions for the Operation Committee. So this may be a back and forth for a little while. One of the questions I believe the committee wanted to know from the Fire Commission was, would they prefer a payment each year instead of a fire engine every 10 years or every 15 or every 20, regardless? Some of the questions that the fire chiefs had, and I'm very proud of each one of the fire chiefs and the work that they do for our citizens. And they asked some pretty good questions. One is the current resolution for the fire truck engines covers the cities as well as a volunteer fire department. So they were wanting to know if payment were to be made each year instead, would the cities also be included in that? The current resolution we found also includes an increase in year 2.5% on up to 4.27%. And I'm sure Commission passed that with the concern of cost of fire engines increase quite often. So they were also curious if the payment each year would also increase in any way. One of the concerns that was brought up, which I don't know if a resolution can mandate this, was that if payment was made instead of an engine, that the departments would still be required to use those funds to purchase an engine. And it was brought up that when this resolution was first passed by Commission, the need was there for the smaller fire departments to be able to afford a fire engine to come and assist other departments. So one concern was that if that money wasn't used for an engine, would we wind up in the same situation we were years ago when some of the smaller departments didn't have an engine? And then another concern was, would the resolution change? Could we lock down, once we passed it, the resolutions where it would stay the same and never be changed? I explained that in my short time on commission, like Commissioner Yeager, the one thing I've learned is just about any resolution county commission passes, they can always go back and change it and modify it. But those are the answers and or questions that the fire commission has requested I bring back to the operations committee. So I don't know if those answers could be addressed tonight or if y'all need to wait until next month to address them or what you would have me to do, but whatever you all prefer. Another question also that was asked, I think, was about fireworks sales. If the fire departments would be interested in doing that. They said they'd have to get back with me on that. They were going to reach out to some other departments, fire departments that did that for fundraisers. And we will meet again, not in April, but in May, first Tuesday night in May. So we may have an answer back on that then. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowe. Anything else to come forward this committee, Mayor?
Just real quickly, one of the things that the Fire Commission did is, so there is a possibility that Anderson County would receive $15 million as part of the COVID relief fund or legislation. Yet to be determined is what that would mean if that does happen. I did see in the drafts that I was looking at that safety and first responders would be part of that eligibility. Of course, it's yet to be determined if that happens. And if so, as we know, the federal government always has strings attached. But one of the ideas, Commissioner Bowe, do you prefer to talk about this? What I shared.
You go right ahead.
Well, what I shared with them is the idea has come to commission before, but I think it was a funding issue of doing a bulk purchase of all the trucks that would raise the quality of fire service, everyone having new equipment all across the county. That helps from an ISO standpoint. And if that happened, you would actually get a discount that would enable you to basically get one truck for free. And then in addition, you save the county that escalator every year that you have built into the resolution. So not only do you get essentially a truck free, but then you also save that 10-year growth in what you promised for allocation. And so what I shared with the Fire Commission to get their thoughts on was, were they still interested in that? And if so, a motion might be in order to, if the county receives those funds, this would be a great way to expend them. And then it would also save money. It would make more money out of that initial allocation, and it would solve the fire truck resolution issue for another decade. So I believe you had a unanimous vote, did you not, Mr. Chairman? Fire Commission Chair, Commissioner Val?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
One of the other things too, and I have been talking to Chairman Val about that as well, is it was brought up at one of the board meetings about the insurance for the first responders, which is a malpractice insurance, not a workers' comp insurance, where that the EMS had paid for that before. And I talked some to some of the others about it. And have you found out anything, Mayor Frank, to do with that, or?
Yes, and Chief Fox covered that at the Fire Commission meeting. So I got with our insurer, Tom Montgomery, and Tennessee Risk Management and Trust, and he went back. He didn't go all the way back into the archives, but he went back to 2014, and we had not been covering that since then, at least, and he did not continue to go back. But what he shared with me was that he estimated we stopped doing that when it was discovered that we're not allowed to do that. And so what he explained is that we do cover reserve deputies or I can't say that word, auxiliary officers. We covered them because they report to Anderson County government. So in order to receive coverage, they have to report to you as the county commission or through your policies. And in the case of the reserve deputies, they report to the sheriff and his policies. And with the volunteer agencies, they are independently chartered or have their own articles of incorporation or 501c, meaning they are independent. And I explained that many times they were responding, under our guidance and protocols of our medical director, and they were being pinged by our dispatch, and they were the first on the scene. Would they not be eligible? And he said he understands what I'm saying, and he understands their service to community, but yet they still are chartered independently, and they don't answer in terms of policy or procedure to you as an entity itself, if that makes sense.
So what we need to do is let all of our first responders or our boards know that there's really no, and hasn't been no malpractice insurance for them. Is that correct?
Yes, and they have their own policies, and that was explained at the.
We do have our own workers' comp policy, but as far as I know, we've never had a malpractice policy. In other words, if a first responder goes out, picks somebody up, and they say, you picked me up the wrong way, that lets that first responder is personally liable for that, or the fire department board of directors.
Well, the fire department should have their own insurance. And so, and that's what Mr. Montgomery was sharing. He said, so for instance, even with the reserve deputy, they're only covered when they are acting in the line of duty for Anderson County. And I see what you're saying. It makes sense that they're acting, as a medical response, but they're still, he said, they're still their own organization. So they would need to handle it through their own insurance.
Okay.
And they do carry their own insurance.
Yeah, they carry their own workers' comp, but not malpractice.
Chairman Isbell, this is Jay.
Hey, Jay.
Have a brief memo coming out that I'll send to you on this issue, okay?
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other old business come before this committee?
Also, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask Commissioner Yeager, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was last month, that he had asked for the tax returns from the volunteer fire departments when we were talking about funding each of the departments instead of issuing a truck. I wanted to know where that stands. That perhaps Commissioner Vowell would know.
Yeah, he just left the building, but I'll pass that along, and maybe he can answer in the email or something.
Yeah, I can ask him Monday night, but
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
I do not know. I mean, I can answer that somewhat. I do know that in order to get I did ask Robbie about that. And I do know that in order to receive their funds, that they do have to present their financials, and those funds are not distributed. As far as like, I think Commissioner Yeager mentioned I've forgotten the number, Commissioner Yeager, of the tax form. That's
990.
990. I don't believe that all of the fire departments are a 501c3. I think Medford is the last, and they are in the application process. Chairman Isabel, I think, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So I don't know as far as, I guess you all could make that a requirement that you don't just want their financial statements, that you want a tax return if you wanted to.
Well, it was the 990 that he asked for at that meeting, but I'll bring it up on Monday night when Shane's.
I'll throw this out there. I mean, if we had their audited returns, statements, I think that would suffice too. And if those are they on file somewhere that we have access to it?
I do not know. I haven't ever handled that, so that would be in the finance department.
Okay, I'll check with Robbie.
Oh, definitely.
But I think it's important if we're handing out either yearly payments or hundreds of thousands of dollars in trucks, we ought to know their financial position, because there's they're basically nonprofits, and we've kind of moved away from funding nonprofits, but this is a different ballgame. But I still think we should have knowledge of their financial positions.
Well, I think there's an audit requirement, and I can reach out to Robbie and then also our auditor. There is a requirement that anyone receiving funds is supposed to provide information, or so if say you're an organization under a certain level, you may not be required to have an audit, but you still have to provide, so for instance, to the auditor, to the Tennessee comptroller, you request a permission for exemption, but yet you still present your bank statements to them, and they look at your activity. And I think there's a requirement for anyone who receives a donation from the county to present some type of financial. I'll have to get you the details on that. And that's, one of the issues to, or it kind of goes to also, we also make donations. Maybe we don't make financial donations, but we do lots of in-kind donations to other organizations. And that's why I've asked at Finance Committee that we try to streamline that and make sure that we're treating all fairly. If we're giving them property or a building, or we're giving them litigation taxes, we should have the same requirement and expectation for those that receive a check, if that makes sense.
I can't argue with that at all. Yeah, I think you're right.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll conclude this operations committee, and thank you for a very informative meeting. There's a lot of good questions, a lot of good answers. And thank you all, and God bless.
Thank you, Chairman.